Sword of the Seven Suns by Gardner F. Fox. Originally published in Planet Stories, Spring 1947. Read by Jon Gill. Part 2. The machine stood in the domed end of the dark temple, gleaming dully. After it a hemisphere of translucent metal filtered pale moonbeams that drew flashes of silvered fire from the great metal bulk. Against the black basalt walls the machine brooded sullenly. It was great, was the machine. It was worshipped. It held power of life and death over all Clarn. It possessed all power. It was God. And yet the machine was dead. A figure slipped forward from the shadows that ringed the marble floor from pillar to ivory pillar. He crept, a hand ever on the stained leather hilt of his sword. Moonlight flickered over the close-cropped black hair of the tight uniform of the dullars that molded his chest and sheathed his long, lean thighs. Emblazoned on the chest of his jacket was the resurgent red dragon with fire sprouting between its fangs, symbolic of his rank. A broad belt suspended his scabbard and blade, and sweeping upward from his shoulders were the metal epaulets that bespoke his connection with royalty. Flame looked around him, grinning. He had eluded the Mechnics. He could keep his appointment with Valdar, unless the Mechnics got to him first. Most of the Mechnics were celebrating the death of his mother, the Princess Glea. There would be rich liquors and much singing, and temple harlots to dance on the plank tabletops, sodden with the lees of spilled wine. Flame was bitter and savage. There was a fire in his heart that made him lust to kill. The Mechnics were glad that his mother was dead, for she was all that held the Mechnics and the dullars together. Now the Mechnics would rule Clarn with the aid of the Darksiders. Only Valdar had a chance of keeping peace among the factions, and Valdar was a hunted man, even as was Flame. He came and knelt before the machine and touched his forehead to the cold marble floor. This was the ritual insisted upon by the Mechnics, who insisted that the machine was a deity, and there was enough shrewd caution in Flame to bow before it, just on the off chance that they might be right. Then he rose and went to the grilled metal girdle that kept the machine enclosed in its niche. He took out a strangely wrought key and dangled it in his hand. Engraven on the sides of the machine were a series of symbols, diamond-shaped. They were the tracery of a star surrounding each diamond. One of those diamonds was the lock that would restore to life the dead machine. Flame hoped that the key he held would unlock the slumbering power of the machine. If not, well, Valdar and he were as good as dead themselves. He inserted the key in the slit-like hole of one of the diamonds and tried to turn it. He whispered curses, attempting to move the key by sheer force. Another failure, he thought bitterly. Just one of the hundreds that had failed since that day, over a quarter of a century ago, when the machine had hummed madly and stopped. Those others had not mattered. Every duller and Mechnic who thought he knew the answer had tried it. There was no penalty for failure. But now, with the Mechnics hot after Valdar, who might still hold Mechnics and dullars together, failure meant death if they should catch him. Flame ran his fingers over the tiny hole. He saw the star pattern bordering the lock, like a frieze ornamenting it. He sighed. All the diamonds had holes. Sound came to him as he stood before the machine, in the light of Clarn's 3 moons, seeping in from the dome. He whirled and half drew his sword. Voices floated to him, righteous with laughter and derision. Valdar, they got him at last, as he was trying to get out of the Dragon Gate. Good news. Now if we could get the princess, well, Flame. The man in the shadows showed his white teeth in a silent snarl of pure hate. His knuckles tensed on the sword hilt until they threatened to burst the tightened skin. The dullars would be leaderless then. They'd have to obey us. Or we'd pull in the Darksiders. Let them loot. One of the men grumbled. If we have Valdar, what use for us to miss the celebration? Why stand guard of the temple here? The council thinks Flame might try once more to make the machine work. If he succeeded, well, that would mean that Clarn will spring to life. The Darksiders, though they outnumber us all, will never dare attack. They remember too well the weapons of the Clarnva. Flane stirred himself, stepped forward into the shadows, stalking towards the temple entrance where the guards talked. There were only two of them, and Flane had a great deal of confidence in his swordom, confidence that had been justified again and again. He leapt from the darkness, his blade a thing of lightning in his hand. The guards came around on their heels, yanking out their weapons, laughing glutterly. "Flane! We have him too!" rasped one of them. "Pig birds," whispered Flane. His blade drove in like a beam of light, twirled the blade of the nearest guard in a circular envelopment, wresting it from his fingers to send it flashing high in the air. Sidestepping the lunge of the other guard, Flane slithered his blade through his opponent's neck, watched him gargle blood in his throat as he plunged. In a moment, the second guard lay beside his fellows, lifeless. Flane stepped across their still legs out of the cool night air. Above his head, the 3 moons of Clarn whirled high in the heavens, flooding the court with light. "The Dragon Gate," Flane whispered and ran. End of part 2. Thank you for listening.